This task calls for the creation of a function. So the first thing we're going to have to do is define a function, come up with a name for it. So we'll call it get 3 die rolls. And it doesn't require any parameters in this case. So this function is going to make use of random number generation. So this means that we can import a feature of the Python language called random. So if we wanted to generate one random number, then we can write random dot and then we can call randint. Now if we do randint, we can just specify, you can see in yellow here it says return a random integer in the range a comma b, and you'll see the square brackets suggesting that this will be inclusive of both of those numbers. So this is quite straightforward. We just provide 1 and 6 as our lower limit and upper limit, and both of those numbers are inclusive. Okay, and I'll just make a note of that it's 1 to 6 inclusive. So since in this case we want to build up a list of 3 of these, then let's call it list of 3, and let's start it off as being an empty list, and then let's make this thing repeat 3 times like good computer scientists do. They put a for loop in rather than repeating it 3 times. So what we want to do is make this happen 3 times, so we can say for times in range 0, 3. So the numbers are going to go 0, 1, 2, never arriving at the number 3, and that will control the number of iterations. If we tab this inwards, then what we can do is we can generate the random number and then take that random number that we've generated and append it to the end of the list by writing list of 3 dot append here, and that should work. So I'll just move the comment up here so that we can still see it. Okay, so 1 to 6 inclusive. So what that should do then is build up the list so that it has 3 elements in it, and all that's left to do then is return the result. So we just write return, and the name of our list is list of 3. So I can copy and paste that down. Okay. In order to test that our function is working, we should put in a main body into our program. And what we can do here then is we can call this function get 3 die rolls. So any function should not stand on its own if it's being called. So what we need to do here is we need to print the outcome. Otherwise we won't actually be able to check our work. Okay, let's go ahead and run this and just see what it does. That looks pretty convincing. And let's go back to the original source code. Let's run it a few more times and just start sort of thinking about testing. It wouldn't matter how many times you ran this, there would still be that lingering doubt that maybe the program would behave in some unexpected way and start producing numbers like 0s and 7s and so on. Things which are sort of extreme data but invalid at the same time. So it's very difficult when working with random numbers to really check for these things, but if we just carry out a series of tests here one at a time, you can see that it's not producing anything untoward. If we wanted to sort of turn up the heat a bit on our testing, then what we could do here is we could maybe do a for loop, and we could say 4 times in range say 0 to 1000, and we could get it to automate then the process of doing the tests over and over again, and then when we run this it'll call the function 1000 times, and as you sort of scroll up through it, you shouldn't see any mention of any numbers other than the numbers from 1 to 6 inclusive. So it's highly doubtful that we've got any sort of problem or bug in our program. And so the final answer to our program remains then this function, which generates 3 random die rolls from a standard die and builds them up into a list of 3 one at a time by just appending them each time that it is generated.